with all due respect to the commissioner and those who say that
here comes the tax comment.
Well, yeah, of course it factors in, and we can all appreciate what Bettman was saying, right? It's one of the many factors that a player considers, especially if you're a man who's got a young family. Location matters. There are lots of different contributing factors. I get all that, but Billy Zito, let's say he puts 8 times 8 on the table for Sam Bennett at $64 million, right? So for Bennett to get that in taxation dollars, he's going to have to get $10 million on a 7-year deal outside of the market. And that's plausible. I mean, there are teams out there that love the way Sam Bennett plays. Why wouldn't you? And they see him potentially as a $10 million player. But if you're comparing apples to apples and you're Sam Bennett and you can get that same dollar or close to it, you don't have to uproot your family. And you know that given management and coaching and how aggressive they are from the owner down, you've got a chance to win every single year, which is cyclical. It's going to change eventually for the Florida Panthers. But I'm with you, John. I wouldn't be shocked, but I'd be surprised if he's playing somewhere else.
There's been 0 state taxes teams all over the league for a long time. Why is it such a noticeable and talked about
Nobody's
conversation?
clamoring about going to Nashville, by the way. And Seattle.
Or complaining about Nashville.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, nobody's suggesting. And Gary, the one thing Gary's right about is that when Florida and Tampa were at the bottom of the barrel, nobody was saying, "Wow, you know what? They're signing players because the tax situation was that way."
That's right. Yeah.
So it is all cyclical. And no, there's no owner. I mean, if Vinny Viola said, "I will," if he has such an advantage, I will trade my team, my franchise, for the New York Rangers, the Detroit Red Wings, the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's not going to happen.
Montreal has the highest tax rate, and
but then the flip side to all of that is if you're Mark Chipman, a member of the executive committee of the National Hockey League. And you're looking at what you have to do to jump through hoops. And I don't remember a player the Winnipeg Jets underpaid as a free agent to try and get to come to Winnipeg. I mean, I can't remember who told me this, but it would be a very small percentage of players in the National Hockey League who have the luxury of a no-trade clause that don't have the Winnipeg Jets, the city of Winnipeg, on their list of no trades. Okay. So then you drift that into free agency. I mean, the Jets just won the President's Trophy. They're a contending team basically every year and have been for a long time. So in that regard, there's a couple of factors, taxes being one, the small market being another, all of that. So there are differing scenarios, of course, that go into play, not just the sunshine.
Now that you bring that up, are you concerned about the future of the Jets?
I wouldn't say concerned because, I'm most interested in, and John, you like to get in the weeds on the business side of things too when it comes to the collective bargaining agreement. I can't wait to see the inner workings of what revenue sharing is looking like because it's going to be different than what has existed to this point. Small market teams like Winnipeg are counting on that. Mm-hmm. And how does that happen? Because to this point, the messaging has been, well, it's going to come off the backs of the other owners across the National Hockey League and not from the share of the National Hockey League players and the players in general. So, that's what teams like Winnipeg are counting on. And if that doesn't come to fruition, then sure. Yeah, there's a real problem there because, as much as it is about the community support isn't Joe hockey fan, marching in and buying a last minute ticket and filling the building. I mean, that's a must. I mean, they need sellouts. That's what they need. Mm-hmm. It's about the corporate sector of rural Canada, Western Canada, finding a way to jump on board. And those are the dollars that Mark Chipman and his executive group in Winnipeg work hard to earn.
Yeah, I don't mind saying I have a concern in Winnipeg because they had 9 sellouts this year.
Yeah,
9, and it's a great fan base. You guys have worked there. I still do a lot of work there. I think that there's a lot of positives, but when you think of that, how good that team was this year, and they weren't able to translate that into more than 9 sellouts, that's a problem.
It is.
Really is a problem. And I'm not trying to create havoc in Manitoba, but people should be aware of that.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be walking on eggshells. We need the Winnipeg Jets to be good. Players like playing there. We know that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, people have to go to the arena. And you're right, the corporate sector, which is not a big corporate sector in Winnipeg, the corporate sector has to participate more.
Yeah. And if there is an amped up revenue sharing, then those 3 things spell the long-term survival and perhaps a thriving environment for the Winnipeg Jets. But if 2 of those three things don't click, well, then I think your point is well made and it's fair, John.
Well, and Darren, what if they aren't a good team?
Yeah.
It's Kevin Cheveldayoff done a hell of a job there maintaining a certain level. But what happens in the cycle when the team isn't very good? Because that will happen.
Yeah.
And that has to be a concern for lots of people.
Yeah. Well, every year it's a battle, right? If we bring it back into the world of hockey ops, and Winnipeg isn't necessarily unique to this, but let's just use the Brock Nelson decision at the trade deadline. Cheveldayoff worked with Lou into the wee hours leading up to the trade deadline. And his understanding was that Brock Nelson would come to Winnipeg, even though Winnipeg was on Brock's no-fly zone initially. But ultimately it came down to, okay, well, I would, but I'd prefer to go to Colorado. So if you can get that deal done with Colorado, then I'll go to Colorado. And late night prior to deadline day, Cheveldayoff goes from being very hopeful that he's getting the number 2 center that he wanted and needed to not getting him. And now, okay, well, we got to shift gears. And, now you look at Brandon Tanev and Luke Shen and you plug other holes. But that, in part, is a bigger part of not just the business side of things challenging Mark Chipman and management of the Winnipeg Jets, but the hockey side as well.
Just jump in on this a little bit. The fact that we're worried about a team in the future is a pretty good statement on the health of the league right now. There's no real franchises in any dire straits, are there?
No, I don't think so. Not that I'm aware of. I mean, there are certain teams that have some challenges, right?
Yeah.
And look, you guys have been to the board meetings before, and this stuff doesn't often get reported on, but almost every single board meeting, you see some sort of transactional shift, right? Where minority owners are moving the dollars, or they're attaching some of the percentages of what they own in the NHL to a son, a daughter, maybe another limited corporation they own, all of those things. But I kind of poked fun at Gary, a couple of minutes ago and bringing up the whole taxation thing. But the one thing that you cannot argue is the work that Bettman and company have done to get to this place, where basically every team and the new owners that they've brought in are good people. And I think of Ryan Smith and what's going to happen in the future in Utah. Who knows? But it's going to be good. It's going to be fun to watch because you've got a guy that's super motivated, creative, and is going to sit at that board table and be respectful of all the men who have been there for decades. But he's going to put his hand in the air and go, Commissioner, I've got an idea. What do you think of this? And do we need more of that? And there's more of it now with Michael Andlauer, and go down the list of some of this new blood ownership coming into the league, and the financial side of things, I think for the most part, is in pretty good shape.